House of Representatives wants oil companies not to underrate host communities. House summons NNPC Group Managing Director. And Speaker advocates parliamentary diplomacy. Hello. The National Assembly may be on recess for the Eid al-Fitr celebrations, but you and your reps is not. So, we welcome you to another edition of the program. My name is Victor Azul. Thanks for joining us. The House of Representatives Committee on Host Communities has taken exception to what it describes as levity on the part of oil companies to issues affecting host communities in the Niger Delta, warning that it will not be condoned in the interest of peace. Now, this was at an interactive session with stakeholders and the general public. Dayo Bushola reports.
The interactive session is to examine issues bedeviling host communities and to explore legislative platform to dissect them with a view to achieving a fair deal for the communities and guarantee a good working relationship with the operating companies in the region. Some of the invited companies gave account of their various engagements with their hosts, while others failed.
The companies that have appeared before us this morning, we haven't seen any MD of any of the companies. They are not reciprocating the kind of goodwill that we have extended, to the industry players as it affects the issues that border on the host communities. It will be too early to run conclusions, but it appears that the same level of levity with which the host communities are treated is the same kind of extension you are bringing here, and we will take exception to that.
The committee thereafter summoned managing directors of oil companies who could not appear for their presentations to do so in person during the next hearing.
The House of Representatives Committee on Petroleum Resources Upstream has summoned the Group Managing Director NNPC and all petroleum exploration companies involved in the revocation and reaward of some oil mining leases to appear before it. Now, this follows the inability of the petroleum companies to honor the committee's invitation for investigative hearing. National Assembly correspondent Abdullahi Aminu reports.
The investigative hearing is to ensure adherence to due process in the recent oil mining leases 123, 124, 126 and 137. Minister of State for Petroleum Timipre Silva explained to the committee the powers surrounding the decision as enshrined in the Constitution.
The President has not even withdrawn the revocation because NNPC is not in a position to ask for a withdrawal of a revocation granted duly.
The committee members frowned at the inability of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Company (NNPC) and other oil exploration companies to appear and submit their documents on the issue.
All letters we sent to them are routed through the GMT. And he told us, yes, that is the procedure. So we equally expect him to be the one signing all letters coming to this committee henceforth.
Thursday, 20th this month is fixed for the continuation of the investigation.
The Speaker, House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, says parliamentary diplomacy could be explored to consolidate on relationships between African countries. While playing host to President of the Parliament of Sao Tome and Principe, Delphine Santiago, the Speaker noted that political and socio-economic ties could be improved through interparliamentary engagements, adding that agriculture, tourism and commerce are major areas of interest for Nigeria and Sao Tome and could forge partnership in these sectors.
With a GDP of about $355 million, if I'm correct, and that to me, that's something that we need to tap into, and of course, the strengths of Nigeria, you need to tap into that as well.
On his part, President of the Parliament of Sao Tome and Principe, Delphine Santiago, says promoting free trade zones and establishment of joint maritime security force in the Gulf of Guinea will be of benefit to the two countries. He solicits the support of Nigeria in the upcoming general election of his country, slated for July 17, 2021. Now, simply put, appropriation is a sum of money allocated officially for a particular use. But in parliamentary terms, I bet it means more. And who best to tell us than the Chairman House Committee on Rules and Business, Abubakar Flata.
We have a standing committee called Committee on Appropriation. The Committee on Appropriation handles all budgetary matters. Annually, every year, the President now presents the budget of the nation to a joint session of the National Assembly and then lay the budgetary proposal for a particular year before the National Assembly. Now, after laying the budget, at the end of his speech and departure, the budget will now be submitted to the House Committee on Appropriation. House Committee on Appropriation will now also liaise with the various standing committees that are oversighting various ministries and extra-ministerial departments now to invite ministers and heads of extra-ministerial departments to come and defend the budgetary proposal. The job of the President is just to lay. The job of defending now those proposals now lies with the ministers and heads of extra-ministerial departments. Now, if they are able to satisfy their various committees, then their budget will pass. If not, there will be amendments. Budget is just a proposal. When it comes to the committees, the committee is at liberty to tinker with the committees. That's what I laugh at people when they say, okay, but there's nothing like padding. Okay? Like nothing like padding. When you bring the budget to the committee, to the National Assembly, it's just a proposal which can be interfered with. So after the committee now is able to satisfy itself with the defense or otherwise, it will now make its own submission report to the main committee, House Committee on Appropriation, who now collect the submissions of all the other committees and then lay before the House. The House now, in a committee of supply, will now consider and approve the appropriation bill. If approved and passed, and then it will now be sent back to the President for assent. By then, it has now become an act of the National Assembly.
Security concerns across the country again has experts pointing a few fingers towards climate change. And one of those is the member representing Ikwana, Umuahia North and South Federal Constituency of Abia State, Ifeanyi Onuigbo, a former chairman of the House Committee on Climate Change in the 8th Assembly. He also speaks on his Climate Change Bill 2019, which fell short of securing presidential assent.
Climate change is significantly responsible for some of the security problems that have now metamorphosed into something, that is a bit hydra-headed in nature. Because from pushing people away from their area where they previously lived and found livelihood, when you now found that, oh, look, this area we can no longer inhabit here, is too hot, we can no longer plant, because if we plant, you cannot harvest anything. Because you are seeing droughts arising from desertification, pushing people out of their areas, coming down from, when you talk about the Sahel region, it is so serious that the African Union recognized that. And I think in 2004, they came up with the Great Green Wall Initiative. So that's how serious the matter is. And if you come to Nigeria, you discover that the Great Green Wall Initiative in Nigeria cuts across maybe about 12 or so states. And these states are impacted by the negative effects of climate change. So it's interrelated with security. But I'm chairing a committee that was constituted by Mr. Speaker. This committee comprises nominations by the Honorable Minister of Justice and Attorney General, Abubakar Malami, nominations from the Ministry of Environment. We got a letter from the Minister of State, Environment, the nominations from there. And then nominations by Mr. Speaker of some technical experts on the issues of climate change. And I chair this separate committee. It's not a standing committee of the House or ad hoc committee of the House, so that it's important to make this clarification. Now, what is the committee trying to do? But let's start from the angle of the bill. The Climate Change Bill 2019, which I am responsible for, is still the bill that I sponsored in the 8th Assembly. However, we have done some reviews, made some changes before bringing the bill back to ensure that some of those things that Mr. President complained about that led to his declining ascent, that those things are addressed. And it is in realization of that, in pursuit of that, that Mr. Speaker has now, constituted this committee that comprises people from the Ministry of Justice, people from the Ministry of Environment, some technical experts with me as the person chairing this sensitive committee. So the bill aims at mainstreaming policies and issues of climate change into national development so that we'll be able to move along with where the world is going. We do not want to be left behind. And the importance of this bill today is that it's going to have a provision for the National Council on Climate Change. And this National Council on Climate Change shall be chaired by Mr. President, with the Vice President as a vice of the Council. And the Council will meet from time to time, maybe once every quarter or maybe once every 6 months, to review policies, ideas put forward by a technical group on what we should be doing as a nation to tackle the devastating effects of climate change, and also to make sure we take preventive actions on this issue.
And Nigerians have been speaking on the ongoing constitution review at the House of Representatives. What exactly do they want? Let's take a listen.
Most of Nigeria's problem is at the grassroots. The state and local government need to be assigned more responsibility. And secondly, again, the issue of this policing, especially the issue of state police, is an issue that also the National Assembly is supposed to also look at it.
Most of Nigerians are not respecting the Constitution. They are doing things the way they like it. So if the Constitution is amended, whatsoever the Constitution is saying we should do it right, so that we'll get things right in this country. I think that's what I will advise on.
I would like the Constitution that will reflect the will of the people in terms of governance, whether we have 4 tenors, 4 years for 2 tenor per, 4 years per tenor, or 6 years, 6 years tenor and once for all. The important thing is the good governance.
Unitary government cannot be sustained here. So we should go back to 1960 constitution where we have the regional governments. So there should be resource control by the owners of the resources.
This week on You and Your Reps, our guest on the committee segment is the Chairman House Committee on Healthcare Services, Dr. Yusuf Tanko Sununu. He represents the Yauri Shanga Ngaski Federal Constituency of Kebbi State.
In the House of Reps, we have 3 committees that are responsible for health. The House Committee on Healthcare Services, which oversee the ministry and other regulatory bodies under the ministry. And then we have a health institution, which oversees the tertiary health institution under the federal government. And then we have lastly the AIDS, malaria and tuberculosis that also supervise or oversight the aspect of AIDS, malaria and tuberculosis treatment and thereafter everything that is related to this aspect of health. So the Healthcare Services Committee oversees, as I said, regulatory body. We are responsible for 180 budgeting, which is one of the most important aspects of the representation. Apart from that, apart from budgeting, we also look at oversight them to see how the budgeted fund is being spent by the ministry and other MDAs that are under our oversight functions. We also collaborate with them to strengthen the healthcare delivery services. Most of the times, as you know, healthcare is one of the, health ministry is one of the aspects of the country that is prone to so many crises, including industrial dispute here and there. We also serve as an arbiter to ensure that services are not broken, or if services are in any way broken, just that's happened recently, it doesn't last longer to inflict so much damage to Nigerians and healthcare delivery system. The healthcare services, as I told you, is mostly overseeing the ministry and then regulatory bodies. You understand? But being a health is an intertwined area. Sometimes we see where we can our function will interact with each other, and then we try to ensure that that is done. So it is they are all healthcare this thing, because they are all responsible for budgeting, they are responsible for oversight, and they are responsible for assisting government to ensure smooth running of those organizations day by day. So that's this. The only thing that's, as far as we're concerned, if you look at the workload, if you say one committee will now oversight all those ministries, started under Ministry of Health, it becomes so overwhelming. And in the vision of Mr. Speaker and the House generally thought that it's better we should segment it so that we can have a proper monitoring and a close monitoring. I would say that the committee has done at least 80% of its expectation. And this was not unconnected with the fact that on many occasions, I can remember at least 2 or 3 occasions, Mr. Speaker has the cause to commend this committee at the plenary. This is the only committee that even if the House is recessed, because of so many crises, we hardly stay at home. We have addressed the issues that may bring strike recently or in the near future. Now, not only that, this committee brought to the attention of Nigeria that we know that this, through the House of Representatives, do we know that the healthcare services in Nigeria lack resiliency. What is the resiliency? The resiliency is the fact that a health system should be able to absorb shock unexpected when it comes, so that other normal services will not be affected. So when we heard that there is COVID before it even came to Africa, in Nigeria, we were the first to raise a motion of urgent of public importance that, look, let's look at our stock. And we had invited the Director General of NCDC in a meeting we had, and then subsequently the Honorable Speaker also chaired one of the session. And I'm telling you that it was shock revealing, because we realized that at that time we only have 3 to 4 laboratories nationwide that can be able to say, as of today, we can diagnose COVID-19, to say this person has COVID-19. So we have to say, okay, no, we have to rise to the occasion and see how we can address those issues. And immediately we put all the other necessary measures. And then, as of today, I can tell you we have over 120 public-based laboratories that can diagnose COVID-19. And also we have partnered with the NCDC Presidential Task Force to ensure that the private sector is also not left behind. They are empowered, they were allowed to distance, so that even as of today, you find that if you are going out of the country, the responsibility of checking you to ensure that you don't have COVID or they are not coming in with COVID rests with the private laboratories. So that you now say that all our hospitals have the capacity to isolate cases. And this thing, we are not just saying COVID-19. We do know that there are a lot of emerging health challenges. The world is a global village. You can have the best edifice today, and in the next 3, 4, 5 years, when you go there, it becomes an ISO. And that's really characteristic. But I think if you look at this, when you compare the budget submission to the National Assembly and the budget approved by National Assembly, we try to address the issue you have raised before. The concept was for the federal government to initially develop a molecular laboratory 3-part geopolitical zone. You understand? But as members of the National Assembly, and luckily for us, we also health practitioners. I'm a consultant gynecologist. The Senate Committee Chair on Health also is a public health physician. So you understand, we now reason, we say, okay, if you have 3 laboratories per geopolitical zone, now who address the logistic? Who employ? Who paid for the services? Who maintain it and rest? And we say no. We have to also summon the executive so that we can be working in harmony in terms of executive legislative party. And we discuss with them, we raise this concern. We say, okay, since we have 52 laboratories in the country, and this laboratory, they always have they have their manpower, they are used to practicing and then sustaining and maintaining their laboratories. Now, why can't you rechannel the money to ensure that those, we take it where it may be, much, our perception, it is much cost effective. Because cost effectiveness is the most important aspect that we have to. If you do something and nobody can take care of it, nobody can run that services, become a white elephant project. So, and we have agreed, and so far I'm telling you that what we have on ground is something that I'm sure that the MDs through their regular budget will continue to maintain it. And not only that, most of this laboratory will also be a source of revenue to the and then the committee and the health institution and the Joint Committee of Health of National Assembly generally will ensure close oversight within the period we are mandated to do that. The issue of funding is general challenges. If you recall that in Abu, we have what we call Abuja Declaration, that at least 15% of the budget to consolidated revenue fund should be budgeted to healthcare in each of the African countries, because of the observation that their healthcare need to be revamped and it needs an emergency status. But that Abuja Declaration that most of smaller African countries, I'm using those smaller, I'm talking in terms of mass, population and land mass. You understand? Some of them are wobbling within 14, 15, 13, 12%. In terms of their allocation to health budget. That's why you see countries like Rwanda and rest are making impact. You understand? If you now consider prior to that declaration and now when you look at their indices in terms of maternal mortality, infant mortality rate, life expectancy and rates, they are overtaking Nigeria. So the challenges now is we are working hardly with the executive to ensure that that declaration sees the light of day in Nigeria.
So much going on in the health sector, and we wish the House Committee on Healthcare Services the very best in its assignment. And that's you and your reps for the week. We thank you for watching. My name is Victor Azu. See you next time.